We're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll have a moment of silence and the pledge led by Ms. Owen.
Please stand. Moment of silence. Please face the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a few announcements. The board met in executive session this afternoon at 4:30 p.m. with the law department representatives. Mr. Dupler, would you mind sharing just general information regarding what those sessions entail for the public's benefit? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. The board meets every so often, usually quarterly, with the law department to discuss pending and/or anticipated litigation. That's a time that has been set aside in state law through case law that the board can do that. The board does not deliberate, board members do not deliberate during that time, and it is only a time for attorneys such as myself or my colleagues from the law office to describe the litigation to board members. And that's all that was done.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dupler. And I'd like to thank the board members, KCS staff, and other stakeholders who attended our two-day annual workshop last Thursday and Friday. The workshop was very productive, and we have a list of action items that we'll be working through over the next several months. But I did want to specifically follow up on our discussion regarding the strategic plan and keeping focus on our vision and mission. And our vision is to grow lifelong learners who contribute their talents, strengths, and skills to build a stronger community. This statement outlines where we want to be and our mission, and how we can get there is to provide excellent and accessible learning opportunities that empower all students to realize their full potential. And I just want to encourage fellow board members, Superintendent Thomas and staff, our students, families, and all community members to keep our vision and mission at the forefront of decisions and plans as we make them and when thinking about our schools and community as a whole. So we're gonna hear the vision and mission statement a lot going forward over the next school year. As Superintendent Thomas has stated many times, we are doing great, especially in comparison to other Tennessee and out-of-state districts, but we know that we can certainly do better, and I hope that we can all pledge to make every effort to do so. So thanks again for those very productive meetings that we had last week. Our October meetings consist of a regular voting session on October 7th and a quarterly work session on October 28th. Both meetings will be held in this room at 5 p.m. Board members, I did want to let you know that our Coalition of Large School Systems class representatives from Millsaps and Gowan Government Relations will be joining us at our October 28th work session to provide the annual legislative update. And those are all the announcements. Do we have any changes to this agenda? Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Satterfield, a second by Mr. Watson. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, and Superintendent Thomas, we can have your report now, please.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. A few updates for you this evening. I would like to begin once more by thanking our administrators, teachers, students, families, and school employees for all of their hard work to resume instruction this fall. Can you believe 6.5 weeks as of today? So wonderful, and it's been a great opening. We expected it to be a challenge, and it has been, but it's been a great success overall, and that could not have happened without the tremendous efforts by our school communities, both online and in person. I know that families are anxious for guidance about spring semester, and I'm happy to announce that Knox County Schools will continue to offer 2 learning options in the semester that begins on January 5th. Students can choose in-person, on-campus instruction with additional safety measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19, or they can enroll in our virtual learning program. If families are happy with their current choice, they do not, and I repeat, do not need to do anything. So let me say that again. If parents are happy, families are happy with their current choice, you will not need to do anything. However, families that want to switch their learning model from virtual to in-person instruction or from in-person to virtual must do so between October 26th and November 3rd. I'll repeat those dates again, from October 26th through November 3rd. So please be thinking right now and not wait until November 3rd to make a decision on this. So give that a lot of attention over the next few weeks. And we'll have more details about that process. It will be an online form for you, and we'll share more details about that process very soon. So we'll be communicating that quite a bit over the next few weeks. We have taken a number of significant steps to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in our schools and to protect the health and safety of our students and staff. I want to emphasize that the most effective learning happens in person when a teacher is in the classroom with his or her students. I'm asking our families to please keep this in mind over the next few weeks as they think about what option will work best for their needs. So again, the best model is the in-person model. I know parents want to also have the option of virtual, but very best and most effective learning takes place with the teacher and the students in the classroom. While our commitment is to continue with in-person learning in a safe and healthy manner, there's always a possibility that a decision is made to move to red in a school or grade level. So remind parents and families again, please be sure that you make appropriate plans for your child in the event that this should happen. On a related note, as our district deployed Chromebooks to all students in grades K through 12 this year, issues of digital citizenship and student safety have taken on a more important role than ever. Board members and KCS families have had questions about how we are protecting our students in this new world. We want parents to know that content filtering software is installed on all student Chromebooks, whether they're working in the school environment or outside of the school environment. While families cannot install software on the district devices, we want to support parents and guardians in helping our students be safe and responsible. We will be sending out some information in my weekly message, hopefully this week, to help families understand the risks and the measures they can take to address these concerns. Also want to remind everyone that families who need assistance with internet service can find a list of providers with standard and low-cost options on our website, www.knoxschools.org/connect. That flyer is available by clicking on the button marked Chromebooks. Also, let me give you two phone numbers if you need internet assistance, 594-4484, and for the virtual learning program, 594-8410. So also you can accomplish that by phone calls. And finally, I'd like to make a respectful request to our students and families. As I said in a recent message to our families, I'm always very grateful when parents and guardians work with educators to support student success. However, I just want to remind our families that teachers are carrying a heavy load right now. They may not respond immediately to email messages, particularly when they're sent after hours. Please remember that our teachers are family members too, and they, as all of us, are experiencing the stressful effects of this pandemic. While our district expects teachers to be responsive, we also want to pursue a healthy and sustainable lifestyle for our teachers, and sometimes that will mean waiting until the next day to respond to messages. And want to thank our parents and families for their understanding and for their support of our educators. And Madam Chair, members of the board, this concludes my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Thomas. And I have a message here. I want to make sure that the choice deadline dates are accurate. So the opening date is October 26th, and the last day to make that choice would be November 6th. So, so to make sure we have that correct date, the 6th, November 6th. So, so that would be 2 weeks.
Is that a Friday?
Yes, that's a Friday. So that's okay.
Sorry.
So, yeah. So anyway, so November 6th would be the last day. So to reiterate, don't wait till November 6th. The window opens on October 26th. Okay, and now I would like to call on Ms. Renee Kelly, and she's going to introduce our Teacher Advisory Council. Chief of Staff Renee Kelly, come on up.
I like that. Come on down.
Come on down. I feel like a talk show host.
Madam Chair and members of the board, I'd like to first share with you the purpose of the TAC, and then I will be introducing TAC members that are present with us this evening that will be serving on the Teacher Advisory Council for school year 2021. The purpose of the TAC is to provide an important voice for educators in the district's decision-making process and to provide the superintendent with teachers' insights, suggestions, and perspectives on critical educational issues. The TAC will enable better educational and administrative decisions, and ultimately, the reason we're all here, will lead to greater student learning and success. In an effort to support social distancing this evening, I will introduce the members that are present tonight in two groups. So with us first is Mr. Davis Bodie, and Davis is representing Gresham Middle School. Tanya Coates is with us this evening. Davis, so everybody can see, so everybody can see you all? Yeah, and then Tanya, like, kind of spread out. Yeah, okay, all right. Davis Bodie is here from Gresham. Tanya Coates is here, representing KCEA. Stacy Davis is here, representing Mount Olive Elementary School. And Miss Mavis Foster is here, representing Green Magnet School. I could add one more because I said 5. And Lindsay Kennedy is here from Powell High School. So please join me in thanking these wonderful teachers for their service to TAC this school year. Thank you all for being here. From my fantastic alma mater, we have Brandon O'Neill here representing Fulton High School. We have Cheryl Robertson here from Gibbs Middle School. We have Lynn Sherriann here from Norwood Elementary School. And last but certainly not least, we have Laura Smith from Cedar Bluff Elementary School. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Unable to join us this evening is Mr. David Brooks from Adrian Burnett. Emily Delzer, she represents Bell Morris, Whittle Springs, and Fulton. Rachel Evans is at South Door Middle School. Sherry Fishbach is at West Valley Middle School. Anthony Hancock is at Bearden Middle School. Douglas James is at Austin East High School. Whitney Parson is representing Farragut High School. Michelle Stahl represents Northwest Middle School. And Joy Thomas is unable to be here this evening. She's from Carter Middle School. Alicia Basner represents West Hills, and Stacy Reese represents West High School. So those are our TAC representatives for this school year. Thank you for allowing me to celebrate them.
Thank you so much. Their voices are very much appreciated for all of those other teachers that they represent. So thank you to all those members who are spending time voicing concerns and opinions on behalf of other teachers. Okay, we'll go through our agenda for our October 7th regular session agenda, but I also wanted to remind you that item 10B has been withdrawn. AT&T alerted staff that the National Purchasing Cooperative contract referred to in that item is actually expiring today, so we will not be considering the use of that contract at this time. Okay.
Can I ask a question about that? Do we have another source of hotspots since we're obviously not doing them through
Mr. Oakes?
AT&T?
Yes, ma'am. We have 2 other sources of hotspots, and this was just to give us some further redundancy.
Thank you, Mr. Oakes. Okay, we will move to items and contracts. Do we have any questions on 1, 2, or 3? Okay, 4, 5, or 6? 7 or 8? 9 or 10? Okay, and then moving into board policies, we've reviewed these at our board policy, our policy review meeting a couple weeks ago, so we have discussed these thoroughly, but are there questions on Policy I-341. Policy I-351. I-373. J-130. J-150. J-151. J-194. J-280. J-400. J-580. Okay, and then we'll move to grants. Any questions on A or B? C or D? Questions on E or F? Okay, moving to contracts. Any questions on A or C? Ms. Owen?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This seems to me to be an example of what we've been seeing more and more recently, and that is a contract that we approve, and then later it comes up again for us to approve the money for that contract. The fiscal note says that there's no cost at this time and no impact on general purpose funding. Yet the description of the type of funding source says if contracts are used, the funding sources could be Title I, Title II, Title IV, and general purpose. So eventually, if we use this contract, then there obviously is an impact on general purpose funding. I'm not sure why we would approve a contract that we're not considering using. So having that possible funding source, but not any kind of potential cost, doesn't seem to be very fiscally responsible of us. And I would like to see us not consider items that don't have full information. So if we could either remove that until we have the information, or get the information in time for next week, that would be great. And my real ask would be that we not put things like this on the agenda when we don't have full information. Thank you.
Okay, Shannon Jackson, would you like to address that?
So I believe, Ms. Owen, are you talking about item C? I just want to make sure I'm addressing the right question.
Right.
Okay, thank you. So when we are talking about our advanced academic programs, this is one of them. This is Cambridge. So when we were looking at launching Cambridge, in order for a school to consider it, we have to have a contract in place. We actually have 2 schools that do want to engage with Cambridge, and we will be able to put some Title IIA dollars and some Title IV dollars to be able to, with the carryover funds, to be able to let them do some training and be ready to open as a Cambridge school in next fall, so fall 2021. So that's where the, that's the current plan.
The question is, what would be the potential cost?
So we would be looking at spending about $30,000 in Title IV for them to do training and have some materials to be able to open the Cambridge program at Carter High School and South Doyle High School.
Is that per program, per school?
That's total.
Okay. And that's just Title IV. What about are there other funds that?
We don't have other funds that we need to spend for opening that program. Cambridge will allow us to do a class at a time, so as teachers are ready to do the training and ready to open with their class, they would be able to do that.
I would
There would
assume,
be other potential costs along the way?
No.
There wouldn't be other training costs? It's just the $30,000 straight flat? for
Correct.
both? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Jackson, if other schools wanted to participate, then perhaps that's where general funding could come in.
That's correct, which is why we put in the fiscal note. We were trying to be as transparent as we knew how to be, that right now, these are the 2 schools that are interested, and so this is how we're budgeting. But as other schools are interested, we would be willing to consider those funding sources, and then we would be bringing that back to you before we moved forward.
Okay, Ms. Babb?
Is it like AP that as you do a course, I mean, it's a kind of course by course, a teacher would just, if they wanted to add, say, the English to the Cambridge, the teacher at that point would get trained in it?
That's correct.
So there is going to be training costs along the way,
Yes.
but it can be chosen as needed or as funding is available?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Watson?
So is it fair to say that this contract allows us to work with Cambridge and then the costs are determined as we engage in that work?
That's exactly right.
in terms of numbers of schools or classes or things like that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Owen, did you have another question?
If other schools chose to do it, the cost would be, if there was one training for multiple schools, it's that 30,000 number, or would that be per school that came in?
It's per teacher, so we pay per teacher to participate in training. If we can get enough teachers, then we can bring a trainer in. We've tried to partner with Metro Nashville because they also have Cambridge programs and have some trainers, so if we can reduce our cost by doing some collaboration there.
All right, thank you.
But it's not 30,000 per teacher?
Oh, no.
Okay, I just
No.
want to be clear, because the way you just said that, it makes somebody think that you're
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's, and the price differs depending on whether or not it is a virtual training or an in-person training. Right now, we're doing everything virtually. But it's, that, the 30,000 will cover all of the training plus any materials they may need to open in the fall
for those first two schools.
for those first 2 schools.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and we'll move to regular agenda items. Any questions on A? Questions on B? Ms. Fab?
I guess can I just get a little bit of explanation about what the special question committee is?
Yes.
Yes.
Superintendent Thomas?
Dr. Russell is here, Rodney
Okay.
Russell is here, and I don't know who Gary might, depending on what the questions are, might be able to help from a legal perspective, so, yeah,
Okay, thanks for Rodney for being here.
Okay. Madam Chair, Superintendent, the Special Question Committee is something that is built into the Professional Educators Collaborative Conferencing Act of 2011. So we just, you all just approved an MOU, and the process that starts the new collaborative team to begin taking on an agenda is the Special Questions Committee. So the Special Questions Committee is charged with managing the logistics and just the secret ballot and the vote that occurs. They will also certify the election, certify the vote, and we have in the past, you as a board have appointed 3 or had 3 of you on the committee, and then there will be 3 from the Professional Educators Committee. And typically it takes about 2 meetings. We have one to set up the election and make the decision on how it's going to operate, and then a second meeting where you have to come back and certify the results.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Thank you so much. Okay, moving to item C. Item D. Okay, and item E. Mr. Watson?
Yes. Superintendent Thomas, can you just clarify what it is that you're proposing to give back? The way I understand it is that we're actually giving something back that was taken away, that this is not an addition to the base salary for our contractor, 255 employees, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct. The folks that worked the 255 contracts gave up 5 days for this current year to help with their anticipated budget shortfall. So this actually restores the 5 days that puts these individuals back in the same place that they were in the prior year. It's not a salary increase, and you know, can assure the board too that folks have probably worked many times over the 5 days that they were going to take off. The 5 days, the work still has to be done, no matter when it's done. So again, it's just restoring these folks to where they were in the previous year. So, yes, sir.
And Superintendent Thomas, would you want to talk about the health insurance, what that means for employees also?
Yes, I'd be glad to talk about the health insurance too. And part of our memorandum of understanding is that we pay a percentage on the health insurance, and what the board has done over the past few years is maintain the percentage, and by doing that, we're actually following what the MOU calls for, prescribed, that we would continue to pay the same percentage. There is an increase there still is an increase for the employee as well as an increase for the board. And initially, when we were talking about this, the employee was going to have the full cost of the increase, which is 2%. Again, we were thinking back during early budget conversations, the word was a 7% increase, which obviously would have been a heavy hit, but it ended up being a 2% increase. So just to give you an example, I think on the most expensive plan, if the board did not pay their share of the increase, the premium on our most expensive plan would have gone up $33 a month. But with the board paying their share, then that increase is $12.71. So there's quite a bit of difference between the cost. And for an employee, an individual, the increase would have been $13 a month. But with the board paying their share, the increase is $3.72 a month, just to give you two kind of extreme examples there with the premium increases. So this is something we talked about in the budget approval process, that if the revenues were the projections were that going to be better than what we thought, that we would like to come back and revisit this and do this for our employees as well as the furlough days. So it was a commitment that I made to our employees to bring back to the board to the restoration of both of these items. And the insurance, I think, is about $170,000 for the board's share, and then on the 255 days, roughly about $700,000 there. But again, just for public consumption, this is not a raise. It's just giving folks back what they already had that we took away from them in the budget process earlier in the year. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Let me say one other thing, too. We talked a little bit about this at the workshop, and what I'd like to do is continue to look at the revenues over the next couple of months. We have one data point at this point in time in terms of the new fiscal year. When we get another data point or two to look at it and talk with our PECA, with our negotiation teams, our collaborative conferencing teams, the fact that if we could come back and do something like a bonus for all employees, if revenues were to be there to do that, then would like to consider that just so that we could try to do something for all of our employees, because again, on our strategic plan, compensation is one of our goals, I guess, there that we from the positive culture standpoint, that we compensate our employees, and we were unable to give a salary increase. We gave step increases to eligible employees this year, but we did not give a salary increase. So if there's a possibility of doing something like a bonus, talk to our teams about that, and then bring that back to the board sometime within the next couple of months, if revenues continue to trend upward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, did you have another question? Okay, Mr. McMillan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Thomas, just for the public's information, the reason we were able to do these things is because the revenues were much higher than we anticipated.
Yes,
correct?
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to ask you about that last item, the 5 days, and I don't disagree with you as far as how hard they worked. I know that they did work really hard, but what if the reason that you did that, I think, was, if we thought we were going to need it and then we talked just a little bit about waiting till the end of the year to do it, or later, and see what the revenues were. Do you have and if you do, tell me what it is. If we go ahead and spend this money, and we should need it, what's the backup plan?
Well, if you recall too, we anticipated spending into fund balance, I think, to the extent of about $4 million. And projections right now is we're not going to be spending into fund balance. So, that money, and we feel like through turnover, employee turnover, that we will have the money in the salary accounts to cover the $700,000. So I think and Ron can talk more specifically about it probably than I can, but those were the things. And it looks like that actually at the close of last year, we're going to put money into fund balance, I believe, to the extent of about $4.9 million instead of spending into fund balance. So we feel like from the salary account standpoint that we have money to cover this. And nobody can predict the future. I certainly understand that, but made a commitment to the employees. If it was there, I would come back to the board with it. Hopefully the situation is not going to be as dire next year, but if it's something we had to do, we had to do again in order to balance the budget, then I'd come back to the board and say, hey, here's what we have to do. But I just don't, in fairness to the employees and to keep my commitment to the employees, that when I said, hey, if the revenue's there, we'll go back to the board to ask for this to be restored. So, and then Ron, let me let you, I know you talked a little bit about the projections, for next year, but even for this year, you can talk about fund balance a little bit and salary accounts. And
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, so when we had originally talked about potentially revisiting this later on in the year, when we said that, I don't think no economist in the country that I had any information that I had read from that, or anyone we had consulted with, UT, the state, or otherwise, even imagined that the economy would be as good as what it turned out to be. Yeah, anything can happen. Mr. Thomas is right. I can tell you that for July sales tax, this July was $1.6 million than last July before COVID even hit. This July was the greatest rate of consumer spending in the history of Knox County for that time period. So it's just far better than what we could have imagined. Anything can happen, but we also have $25 million in cash reserves, so we have a pretty healthy fund balance at the moment. Now, again, $15 million of that is reserved for emergency spending, which is, that's always, we never want to go into that 3%, which is $15 million, but we have $9 million, projected $9 million over and above that, in addition to the sales tax received over the spring months was $15 million more than what we thought. And then we also budgeted extremely conservatively. We budgeted $10 million less in the current fiscal year in sales tax revenue than what we actually collected for this past year. So I think a combination of those items, we feel pretty good about moving forward with this at this time.
Ms. Babb? I'm sorry.
Just a further comment. My concern is that, and I think both of you all have done a good job of explaining it, but explaining it here and when it gets out to the public, and if those that care, if they realize that, I know you were very careful to say it was not a raise or anything, and you did say that we were going to restore it sometime. I hope the economy, continues to get better, but nobody knows what's going to happen. And as you said, I just thought about that it might be better if we waited till later, a little bit later in the year. And I think that's what you had originally in mind. We haven't talked specifically about it, but when you said, I will restore it if the money's available, you were thinking not in too much time.
Yeah, that's a good point and right. I wasn't expecting the the kind of results that I guess we've gotten thus far either, at that point in time. I didn't see this coming. I don't think anybody did, as Ron said, because we were projecting to spend into fund balance. But as Ron said, things are actually better. And I understand that may not be the trend all year long, but I just felt like, okay, I've made a commitment to our folks and to bring it back to the board and do that now because we do project the revenues to be there. I think it's more meaningful, at this point. It obviously would be meaningful in April, but I know we'll be right in the middle of budget conversations and discussions in April too. And to do, it just in my mind made more sense to come back to the board at this point in time and do it sooner rather than later, because again, these folks have made a sacrifice. I know there are people, the pandemic has hit folks, and some folks have lost jobs and don't have a job, but our folks, our employees have worked extremely hard to make all this happen, the in-person learning, the virtual learning program. I know our teachers have worked extremely hard too and fatigued. That's why, I'd like to come back to the board if we can to do something like a bonus for our teachers and our employees. Everybody has worked extremely hard to make this work, and I just think that they deserve to. That first of all, they don't deserve to be making less than they made last year, and that's why I think it's important to go ahead and do it at this point in time. So, and certainly whatever the board approves, we'll comply with what the board approves. So, if you want to, that's your wishes, to delay it, we'll delay it. But I know, folks would like to have it sooner. It goes back to July. The paychecks. It hit paychecks starting in July. So by December there'll be 6 months worth of sacrifice that folks have made, and I just would appreciate your consideration to restore it and then to do it, to let us go ahead and do it now for the month of December. So thank you.
Ms. Babb?
Yeah, Mr. McPherson, this question's for you. When we made the budget, obviously nobody knew what was going to happen with the economy when you're making it, but the projections for the whole year we projected to be down, right?
Correct.
So July happened to be great, so we don't even have to do great to be better than probably the projections were.
Exactly.
Okay,
Great
that's where.
Great
so
point.
We don't have to have like blockbuster months to
That's
actually do well and beat our budget numbers. Okay.
Very good point. And also, I will add, not only did we budget conservatively in revenue, we budgeted conservatively expenditures because we budgeted $4 million less in expenditures in anticipation of COVID expenditures hitting. So even the fact that we have COVID expenditures that are also hitting that are unbudgeted, we've covered a lot of that through just in our budgeting process.
Mr. Watson? Yes, do you have a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go back to Mr. Watson.
Just out of curiosity, the people that you talk to, and all the things you read, this was so above and beyond.
Right.
Is there any kind of consensus as to why it was like that?
No, that's a great question. I would not necessarily characterize it as a consensus. But there's been a lot of people that are trying to figure this thing out. In fact, sales tax never really took a hit from the very beginning. Even in April and May and in June, and what really, and I'll get to your question here in a second. What makes this very difficult is it's not in real time, this information. So we receive the information because of the nature of sales tax, right? And the state portion and the local option portion, and it changes hands, and so it's 2 months later we really get the information. And so what people opine, for instance, that, again, there's a lot of online sales. There also, there's a notion that maybe part of this is attributed to the fact of the unemployment from the federal government. That maybe people, even if they lost jobs, they really didn't experience any kind of loss of income. In fact, some people were making more, to be honest. So there's some opinion there that maybe that contributed to it, and likely it did. But I think the fact that it's, even greater, it's not only better than expected, it's better than last year at this time. And, we've talked about this before, I couldn't leave my neighborhood without, seeing a Lowe's truck or a Home Depot truck. I even had one in my own driveway, so everybody was in the Lowe's or the Home Depot, mode. Because some people were, now you're working from home, so, now I'm online and so I would not say there's a consensus. There's a lot of, I think, surprise, and a lot of people are still trying to figure this out. Really good question.
All those things that you said make perfect sense.
Yeah.
And with people at home having time on their hands,
That's
they
right.
have a tendency to
Okay.
drift toward that.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you. And Mr. Thomas, did you want to add something, and then we'll go to Mr.
Just-
Watson's question?
Just one more thing, I think it's important to look at it this way too, if you don't understand. People are gonna, there will be working 5 additional days, they're just getting paid for it instead of working the days and not getting paid for it. So I don't know if that helps with the explanation or not, but I think that's important to note. It's not we're giving anybody anything. They're working for this,
Now they're
for these
going to
days.
pay them for the work, okay? Mr. Watson?
Mr. McPherson, so I don't want to continue to belabor this, but I think it's important for the public to know. I've had some people ask me questions about, our teachers are working really hard too, right? Like, and what can we do for them? I think it's important, again, it's just to reiterate that what we're saying is we've taken money out of people's wallets that we're willing to put back. We're not like giving money and
That's right.
adding money to people's wallets. I think that's an
Correct.
important note. And then the other thing is, correct me if my math is wrong, but if we took that $700,000 and we gave every teacher the same raise, it would be about 1.25%
Correct.
of a raise, correct?
That's correct.
So and we all know they've been working just as hard as our 255-day contract employees.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to the opportunity where you all get to come back to us sometime here in the future. We're able to do something for them too.
Absolutely. That's our hope. Absolutely. Thank you.
And I'll just say, if I'm not mistaken, in the past, 255-day employees have been in the same position of having a salary reduction at some point in the past. I don't know exactly when.
There's been 2 instances.
Okay.
And maybe over the last 20 years where there's been a day taken away, or I think 5 days maybe at one point even.
And I'm not sure that it's always been added back, even if it had been indicated that it would be. So the fact that the superintendent made that statement that he would add it back if at all possible, and we have the resources, to me, I want to support the superintendent's stance, because I feel like that's the commitment that he made, and so I support that.
Right. I believe in both of those instances. I think one predated me, but I believe in both of those instances it went the full year and it was not reinstated until the following budget. So Bob would know. He could remember that a lot better than I could. But I think it. And then again, you start competing for budgetary initiatives, right? And so if you if we think we have the funding stream, it's I think better to do it now. Yeah.
Okay. Any other, Mr. Watson, are you good? Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Thank you so much. Okay. If we have no other questions, we will move to public forum. Ms. Bab.
Yes, I'd like to call Lance McCold. Please state your name and county of residence.
Good evening, Lance McColl, Knox County. Members of the board, Mr. Thomas, I want to call your attention to policies J400 and 580. J400, abuse and neglect, appears to be motivated by changes in state law. The policy revision adds requirements for each school to have a child abuse coordinator and an alternate child abuse coordinator. Seems like a really good idea. Although staff are trained at some level about child abuse, dealing with abused children requires an expertise we can't expect from general training. Unfortunately, this revision to the policy falls short of what it should be. The first improvement would be to add a requirement that the district maintain on its website a complete list of child abuse coordinators and alternates with contact information. Parents, teachers, and students need to know where to get prompt help. Also, the policy fails to include the requirements for child abuse coordinator training and instructions on how coordinators and staff are to interact with children and third parties about abuse. Now, this is actually in the law, but you didn't choose to include it into the policy. Few of us know how properly to handle cases of child abuse. The state law that motivates this revision spells out specific guidance that the staff and parents should have access to. The right place for that guidance is in this policy. I'd encourage you to withdraw J400 and prepare a complete update that better serves the schools. Now, J580, student suicide prevention, has different problems. Fortunately, nearly all of us are completely unprepared to deal with suicide because we've never experienced it. It's an area where we all need expert help immediately when we learn about a child in crisis. The policy requires each principal to designate a school suicide prevention coordinator. However, there's nothing in the policy that says what the coordinator's responsibilities are. A search of the KCS website found the phrase "only" in the policy. Only in the policy. If these coordinators actually exist, parents, students should immediately be able to identify and contact the school's suicide prevention coordinator. The policy should be revised to make clear the qualifications and responsibilities of the suicide prevention coordinator and require that Student Support Services post on its website the names and contact information for every school suicide prevention coordinator. Schools should do the same thing for theirs. The section on intervention casts more doubt on the existence of suicide prevention coordinators. The policy says that if a student is thought to be suicide risk, quote, suicide threat assessment will be completed by a school counselor, a school psychologist, or a school social worker. Where is the suicide prevention coordinator? Just as concerning is that nothing in the policy defines what a suicide threat assessment is or how to do it. A search of the KCS website provided no other use for the term. While it may sound good to talk about suicide threat assessment, how is the crisis team supposed to do one without guidance? The policy needs to be revised to define clearly what and how to respond to a student in crisis. In the post-vention section, the policy says immediately following a student's suicide, death, the school or district crisis team shall meet and develop a post-vention plan. The crisis team sounds like just the thing, but what is it and what expertise do its members bring to the table? Why isn't the suicide prevention coordinator on it? Why isn't the assessment care team coordinator part of it? Again, a search of KCS website provides no uses for the term crisis. It doesn't show up anywhere except in that policy. Suicide is something that extremely few of us are competent to deal with. Our staff need clear and effective suicide prevention guidance and someone at each school who has the expertise and responsibility to deal with suicide issues promptly. Policy J580 needs to be sent back to the staff to produce a policy that clearly identifies responsibilities and makes clear exactly what is supposed to happen. We've lost too many students to suicide already. Our excellent staff can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming for public forum, and that now concludes public forum.
Thank you very much. We'll move to board forum. We'll start with Ms. Christie. Mr. McMillan? Ms. Founds? Ms. Babb? Mr. Watson? Ms. Owen? Ms. Satterfield? Very quiet this evening. Okay, I think we are adjourned. Thank you.